Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Tuesday, May 30th, 2017. Almost our day, refrigerator day. That's tomorrow for me, the 31st. The refrigerator repair guy comes to tell me he can't repair the refrigerator, possibly. Anyway, just wanted to keep you all up to date on that. It's extremely important. My whole show is off kilter as a result of not having the refrigerator. It's quite exhausting. Kids are in the second to last week of school, but returning after a long weekend, and this was a long weekend. It was, no longer than usual with these long weekends. Of course, just having Monday off for Memorial Day. Hope you all enjoyed that. We were on, of course, with a live show. Catch up with it via podcast if you happened to miss it yesterday. Maybe you slept in. Maybe you only listen when you commute. Maybe you thought we were knocking off for the day. We couldn't, because Donald Trump is terrible. He's the worst president in history, and there's no point in trying to skip a day anymore. We might have to go to 7 days a week. But then I have to charge you all $1 million. I can't take it anymore. This guy, he's nuts. This morning's rage tweeting. He believes the United States has become a laughing stock in the eyes of the rest of the world, and in Russia in particular. And so he's going to take up the tweeting tools again. He's going to tweet about it. The President of the United States wants everyone to know that he knows that on his watch, the Russians are laughing in our faces. And he's the cure, of course. He's the butt of the joke. Lots of new developments, large and small, over the last couple of hours. As always, there's always another shoe dropping with these guys. Plus, of course, many other stories percolating beneath the surface. What are we missing? What are we being distracted from by the latest distraction? Well, we'll catch up on all those things and more. We are wide open today. We'll see. I got a note earlier that Armando might be interested in dropping by. He says he's got the best words. We don't know whether that's really true or not. Donald Trump usually thinks he's got them. And we'll have him drop by. We'll test them side by side with what's-his-face's words. That guy, the puffy guy, the president, whatever his name is. Anyway, Daily Kos Radio is live now. We know this thanks to Bill in Portland, Maine, who tweets that Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. Let's the Kushner scandal distract him from 1 million other things. I'm going to try and cut it down to 999,997 or so by catching us up on a couple of other stories. There really are quite a few things hanging out there. Justice usually gives me some hints of what's going on in the morning, what he's seeing with his messages, just his thumbs-up messages that everything's working okay. Let's see. An interlude says, let them eat champagne popsicles. I think we hit that one. Yesterday with Greg. Let's see. No puppet. All right. We're up to date, I think, on these things. Mad Hatter, thank you very much, letting us know. It's a whole shoe store with this group. That's true. Shoes are flying everywhere with these guys. There's no catching up. And sometimes I think I ought to stop trying. Let's see. What do we have this morning? All right. Is the hottest thing the CNN story? I don't know. What are you guys following? I should take a look. One good clue would probably be taking a look at Daily Kos and figuring out what the people who are professionals at this are talking about. But sometimes this stuff comes out slowly, drips and drabs, or occasionally the news comes out and we don't hit it right away. Here's what grabbed my eye this morning on CNN. Nothing, not a big breaking news type story. I'm going to have to kill the auto-playing video here, but probably not going to let me at first. That's an interesting twist there. Now, CNN brings up their auto-playing video, and usually when it's playing, of course, you see, if it's playing, you'll see the little pause button, the play button that turns into the pause button when you hit it, right? And they bring it up, and it's just got the play button. So if you hit it a couple of times, it just keeps playing. That's a nice trick to get some plays of your video in there artificially. All right. So let's see. I see, I think this must be what everybody's talking about here, because CNN has got this. I see Salon has got this, and depending on who's tweeting with pictures, it's catching my tweeting with pictures is extraordinarily effective, by the way, for those of you looking to increase your reach on Twitter. CNN puts it this way. Sources say Russians discussed potentially derogatory information about Trump and associates during campaign. It's the P tape, ladies and gentlemen, or something damn close to it. Doesn't really matter exactly what it is, I suppose. But, all right, let's see. Before I embark on this, I'll issue, a correction. Should we say it's a correction? It's not exactly an apology per se, but okay. Let's see. Yesterday, in trying to fill airtime yesterday, I was musing on Jared Kushner's, I thought, rather strange, what do we call it? Predilection for Apple design, but Windows environments. And at least one listener who is a software engineer tells us it's E.M. Bray, who you can follow on Twitter as Iguana, just like you might think, not like astronaut, which you might not think. I don't know that's an interesting thought, like that iguanas are iguananauts in our greater environs. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for bringing this up. And the comment here was that I made yesterday was that I thought it was a little odd, and I think it is a little odd, but I guess it's not a lot odd because the comment here is probably not all that uncommon. A lot of nerds buy Mac laptops and install Linux on them, and that would be kind of a clue that Kushner was really something of a pro here, but I doubt very much that he is. But I don't know. What about? Is it uncommon to buy Macs and run Windows on them? I know people do it to try and get along because you have to be able to work in a function in a Windows environment to be to do almost anything these days. But at Linux, that would, I don't know, that implies something different to me. Anyway, I think can we all just agree that Jared Kushner's a big jerk and, maybe doesn't know what he's doing. We'll see if we can delve a little bit more into his supposed data manipulation expertise today. I don't know how much longer we can stay on Kushner, although, I'm dissatisfied. He's still there, apparently. I'm checking my watch. My wrist, really. I have no watch. Anyway, maybe this will get rid of him. CNN has this story about supposedly derogatory information. Russian government officials discussing having potentially derogatory information about then presidential candidate Donald Trump and some of his top aides in conversations intercepted by U.S. intelligence during the 2016 election, according to two former intelligence officials and a congressional source. Oh my God, he had Trump Tower wiretapped. Or, more likely, as this actually says, this was conversations between Russians. And if it's happening anywhere, pretty much fair game to listen in on what the Russians are doing, or at least under our system. And why not just call everything into question? I mean, we do have the United States president laughing along with the Russians in the face of laughingstock United States, which is where he's dragged us to, and he thinks it's all our fault somehow. Anyway. CNN continues here. One source described the information as financial in nature, or, Uric, whatever, and said the discussion centered on whether the Russians had leverage over Trump's inner circle. Interesting. So financial, that would, of course, be the more embarrassing stuff. Although they could have been talking about, gold and golden things, and maybe we misunderstood. The source said the intercepted communications suggested to U.S. intelligence that Russians believed, quote, they had the ability to influence the administration through the derogatory information. That's, of course, the reason they keep such information. But the sources, privy to the descriptions of the communications written by U.S. intelligence, cautioned the Russian claims to one another could have been exaggerated or even made up. And you definitely have to keep that in mind. Could have been exaggerated or even made up as part of a disinformation campaign that the Russians did during the election. The details of the communication shed new light on information U.S. intelligence received about Russian claims of influence. The contents of the conversations made clear to U.S. officials that Russia was considering ways to influence the election, even if their claims turned out to be false. Reminder, of course, of the story we read the other day about James Comey and his reaction to information that came into his possession, supposedly from Russian sources. Small update on that one, which you likely picked up over the weekend, but which we didn't mention, is that Comey now indicates that he knew the document he had was fake, but he acted on it nonetheless, presumably because he was concerned that it would leak without everybody else in the world knowing that it was false. And then I don't know why the rest of this is supposed to make sense. After that, I'm not really certain why. So what? So just tell them when it leaks or if it leaks. Yeah, we know about this. We've known about it for a long time, and we've also known it's fake for a long time. That's why we didn't say anything about it. And some people will believe it, some people won't. But what are you going to do? For somebody concerned about telling the truth and not besmirching the reputation of the FBI, I would think that would be what you would do. You don't release information that you know to be fake, but if it comes out, you don't not explain it either. I don't know. I'm not. None of the. We started out with this not making any sense. It briefly made very dumb sense, and now it makes slightly less dumb or slightly dumber. So I don't know. I'm not sure where I stand on this thing. And certainly no happier about the way he handled this than I was beforehand. But again, let's finish up with CNN here. The Russians could be overstating their belief to influence, said one of the sources about this thing. It says, I did skip a small paragraph here. None of the sources would say which specific Trump aides were discussed. One of the officials said the intelligence report masked the American names, but it was clear the conversations revolved around the Trump campaign team. Another source would not give more specifics, citing the classified nature of the information. As CNN first reported, the U.S. intercepted discussions of Russian officials bragging about cultivating relationships with Trump campaign aides during the campaign, including Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, to influence Trump. That much, of course, we knew a little earlier. Following CNN's report, the New York Times said Trump's campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was also discussed. A White House spokesman told the CNN, "This is yet another round of false and unverified claims made by an anonymous source, or anonymous source says, to smear the president. Hooray." He didn't actually say hooray, but he might well have thought it. The reality is, a review of the president's income from the past 10 years showed he had virtually no financial ties at all. Of course, the reality is that a review by the president's attorneys, memorialized in nothing more than a letter, claims that a review of some of his tax returns from the last 10 years or some collection of 10 years previous to this one shows that he has no financial ties with Russia at all, with very few exceptions, most of which are worth over $100 million. There appears to be no limit to which the president's political opponents will go to perpetuate this false narrative, including leaking classified material. All this does is play into the hands of our adversaries and put the country at risk. Well, you should make it less simple to do. The FBI declined to comment for this story. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence and Flynn did not return calls seeking comment. Manafort has denied he received any illicit finances and also denied any wrongdoing in connection with his work for Trump and foreign officials before joining the Trump campaign. He has offered to testify before congressional committees investigating Russia's election interference. Big whoop. The FBI investigation into Russian meddling in the U.S. election, recently handed over to Special Counsel Robert Mueller, includes seeking answers as to whether there was any coordination with associates of Trump, and includes examining financial dealings of key Trump associates. The FBI would not comment on whether any of the claims discussed in the intercepts has been verified, but there is a P-tape. But U.S. counterintelligence investigators were already looking into Russian claims during the summer of 2016, before the public became aware of similar claims in that dossier created for political opponents of Trump by a former British spy. That British spy, Christopher Steele, shared some of those findings with the FBI during the summer of 2016. CNN has not been able to verify the allegations about the derogatory information in the dossier, but current and former U.S. officials say some of the Russia-to-Russia conversations in the dossier have been corroborated. By the time Trump took office, questions about some of his aides' financial dealings with Russian entities was already under investigation. Soon after the Republican convention, Manafort had already stepped aside because of questions about off-the-books payments he received before joining the Trump campaign, consulting for Russia-friendly Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych and his political allies, officials told CNN last summer. I think we are aware of all this. Is anything else we need to pull out of this piece here? I don't think so. Although, let's see, just reiterating a couple of facts that are always important to remind people of. The president himself has denied having any financial ties to Russia, but his company has had some business dealings in the country over the years. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth, as it happens. And then, of course, the comments of his two sons at different times in 2008 when Donald Trump Jr. said during the forum on real estate markets that Trump's businesses, quote, see a lot of money pouring in from Russia. And then earlier this year, the golf journalist, the famed golf journalist / international man of mystery / espionage kingpin James Dodson, said that in 2014 Eric Trump had told him that the golf business that they ran in the United States and elsewhere didn't need American investment because, quote, we have all the funding we need out of Russia, unquote. Eric Trump, by the way, apparently denies having made that remark. But as you know, the biased golf media just can't stop. Trump's personal attorneys recently released that letter, of course. That was garbage. We all remember that one. The letter acknowledges there has been some business with Russia in the past. Those few exceptions include the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow, the Florida property that he sold for twice what he bought it for a few years before to that Russian billionaire who junked it. And then, of course, the ordinary course sales of goods and services to Russians or Russian entities, such as sales / rentals / fees for condominiums, hotel rooms, rounds of golf, books, or Trump licensed products, which of course means everything I could sell to Russians I did, and those are supposed to be exceptions. The exception to the rule, right? Well, very few exceptions do I have any financial ties. I have no financial ties to Russia. I've sold $100 million worth of condos in one town in Florida to Russians alone, but whatever. We're not supposed to pay attention to that one. I don't know. People are finally starting to pick up on that one, so that's good news. The phone ringing in the background is not Armando, but now is a good time. I think we can open the door. We got our feet beneath us, I think. So certainly if you want to join in and share some of the words that you think are among the best, then you are welcome to do so. Armando, please take us up on that one. Let's see. What other news items burning up the wires? I don't think we ever found out, by the way, what the red flashing lights in the second-story residence of the White House was. The video of it went viral, but there's been zero explanation. I would love to know what that is. The chances of the White House actually explaining that, I guess, are about zero. Any other White House would, of course, feel compelled to come up with something, even if it was just something dumb to tell people. And it could just be he's watching something on TV. I don't know why they won't admit to that, but why won't they admit that he plays golf every weekend? They've not really gotten around to that one. By the way, some inadmissible hearsay for you, but because this is a radio show and not a court of law, I'll tell you. Heard some interesting stories about, yet more interesting stories about Trump and his golf cheating over the weekend. I can't recall whether I discussed these on the air yesterday or whether we just tweeted them out.
I saw a tweet that you said some security guy throws his ball back on the fairway, Judge Smells style.
Yeah, right, exactly. And other people pointed out Auric Goldfinger and Odd Job style. Too. I mean, it basically comes right down to that. This was, I'll reveal my sources because I don't think it can hurt anything. But my dad was a year ahead, I guess, of Trump at Wharton. My dad went there for 4 years. Donald Trump, of course, just snuck in under the wire for the last 2. And despite claiming that he had graduated first in his class, was in fact not distinguished in any manner whatsoever, and we've reviewed on the air. I've got a copy of the graduation program from his year, and there's no special there's special mention of top of the class for everybody else who made it. Nothing special at all about Donald Trump and his graduation. But anyway, among the graduates from the year before of Wharton, they were together for their 50th reunion. this year, and at least two members of my dad's circle, including one of his former roommates, had some direct dealings with Trump and had in fact represented Trump in some real estate dealings. And so when people asked, what'd you think? He said, well, he's not my client anymore. But it was a miserable experience. He's a bastard and a lying sack of crap. And it's really tough to represent him because he makes it difficult. He makes it professionally difficult, if not impossible, to represent him because you're aware and he's aware that you're aware that he's lying to you a lot. And that makes it really difficult to do your work. And it makes your work more expensive too. But apparently Trump doesn't care about saving money on that. But they played golf. And, this guy, has played with him a number of times, not just professionally. I think he's actually still a member of one of his clubs somewhere, which I don't know why. You like golf, whatever. But he's played in Trump's foursome. And yeah, his practice is, he sends his security guys out ahead of him, because who knows when someone might try to sneak onto the golf course and murder Donald Trump even before he was a politician. And, he'd hit a ball into the woods and the security guys would go and make sure there were no assassins waiting in the woods. And then all of a sudden, boing, out comes the ball. And oh my gosh, it's in the fairway. And they would, even to stuff where you could see, it was all in plain sight too. There were times he would hit a ball into a greenside trap and they would just pick it up out of there and rake up and toss the ball onto the green. And Trump would just walk onto the green and tell people, look at my awesome shot. And I guess the last part of the story was after the round, hanging around in the clubhouse, Trump is bragging to anyone who'll listen, and lots of people listen to him when he's hanging out in the clubhouse of his own golf courses. He brags about his score and how well he did and how he had these beautiful – he's even describing these beautiful shots to the green, which everyone saw land in bunkers and get thrown onto the green by security guys. And well, this guy actually, called him out on it, but apparently it's not all that uncommon. But Trump just sort of chuckles and laughs and shrugs it off, and everybody just kind of knows that that's what he does, and that if you catch him out on it, he'll just say, yeah, you know how it is out there. Yeah. But it's a very odd thing, and I don't know whether, even now, just pondering it, can you really say he keeps telling everybody he's such a golf enthusiast. I love golf. That's his excuse for going every weekend. Do you? Can you say that about somebody? Golf is it's a tough game, but also there's a lot of it is based on the honor system. They take really great pride in people, even assessing penalties to themselves when they're playing seriously. Do you love golf if you cheat that much and you laugh in the face of everyone who catches you? He loves hitting the ball. He loves being outside, but I don't think it's golf he loves. Anyway. That's neither here nor there. I hear you came with better words than this. So
no, your words were very good.
They seem pretty fun.
I would say there was actually an interesting honor system, the honor of golf and the gentlemanliness of it, where Ernie Els apparently assessed himself a 2-stroke penalty for something that nobody saw. And
it's happened.
You know how the golf people are. They were waxing lyrical about how wonderful we all are.
Yeah.
And, of course, then there's Trump.
Pit of vipers. But anyway, honorable. Every once in a while, when there's a lot of money at stake, and, of course, you can be sanctioned by a professional organization if they catch you later. And now with videotape, the chances of you being caught later are increased enormously. It's better to just say, you know what, I'll get an $80,000 prize instead of a $175,000 prize for finishing, 14th instead of 11th or something. And I can continue to make money if I just report this. So,
yeah.
Fine.
There's nothing about the conceits that golf has, the myth of golf, that in any way could welcome a person like Trump. But,
no.
Golfers, the golfing community is crazy Republican, and they are for Trump to the degree that they can be. Now, they had a tournament near your house, I guess.
Yes.
The senior PGA.
Mm-hmm.
And, but mostly the PGA has run away from Trump. They moved the tournaments out of Doral. They actually moved one tournament from Doral to Mexico.
Yes, right.
Which was kind of funny. And they know that they actually recognize it sooner than a lot of people. I think that Trump is going to be toxic business-wise. I think Jared and Ivanka are sort of waking up to that. And, however this all turns out, it ended up, I know he's going to make some deals and get some bribes and whatnot, but the value of the Trump brand for the kids is going to be, I think someone had a funny tweet that said, asked Donnie Jr. if he's picked out his new name yet, that he's going to have to change to after all this is done.
Yeah, really.
But it's not like, what's he going to do? I mean, he's a complete zero.
No, he's going to have to stick with that. And there's always going to be hangers on to make it enough to see.
Oh, sure. There's
like
money to be made on the fringes, no question.
Lots of it, too.
Yeah.
So,
no. I mean, that in that sense, but it's not going to be the billions that they purport to have or dream of having.
Yeah. Well, they never really had that either. But
yeah, I don't think they did either, and I still don't think they have it. But the reality is, the worst thing that's happened to the Trump family is that Trump won the election.
Yeah,
and it doesn't depend on Jared going to jail, which I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's certainly not inconceivable.
No, it's not.
It's not like
family tradition.
Kushners haven't gone to jail in the past.
Yeah. What's the big deal? Everyone does it in our family.
Everyone goes to jail. But that's their story. Our story is worse though, because whatever happens to him, we still have to live with the consequences. And I haven't been on, and maybe you talked about this foreign trip a lot during last week.
Well, we did a bit, yeah.
But the European leg of this trip was as disastrous a trip as I can ever remember for the United States.
Yeah, there was nothing quite like this.
Yeah, before. Joe Scarborough keeps pointing to the 61 Kennedy-Khrushchev summit as somehow disastrous. So I'm not even sure what he means by that. That Khrushchev misread Kennedy. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess it's disastrous, but did it end up being thank God there was no nuclear war. So I guess he's, I see his point to an extent. I mean, the point being here is Trump has gone a major distance to destroying the most important and most successful alliance of the last 100 years.
Yes.
And that's the Atlantic Alliance. People can think that NATO overstretches and NATO has included too many countries, and I think that sometimes too. But the core of NATO, which is reflected in things like the G7 and things like that, is incredibly successful to the point where we don't even think about how important and successful it has been to the United States and to the world.
Yeah. Well, it leads people like Trump. I mean, it's been so stable and reliable all this time that you get people like Trump who are born and raised in the atmosphere in which it can be entirely taken for granted, and he comes away thinking that it's a useless organization because it doesn't impact his life. So, as far as he knows, but because it's working silently in the background.
Well, see, that's the point. It does impact everybody's life because its impact on our country is so profound that we just take it for granted. It's like breathing air. We've stopped thinking about how important it is.
Yeah.
There's been tensions always on things like, for example, France didn't want to participate in Desert Storm in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about issues, but the core mission of cohesion and alliance and mission was never challenged in this way let me do the math, 55 and 17, that's 72 years. That's a long time.
More years than we have had Trump for.
Yes. Older than Trump himself. So this single trip has done more damage to the foreign policy interests of the United States than any trip that I can imagine. And it's a serious, serious problem. John McCain was in Australia. And as I read a report of his speech to some institute in Australia, he's begging them, listen, I know our president sucks by and large is what he said. He didn't say those words exactly. But he says, we're more than the president, have faith in us. I said, and my problem and frankly extrapolation from that construct is I think that actually McCain touches it with a needle. Mm-hmm. You're Europe. You had confidence in the United States, not, maybe they'll make a bad decision or even a catastrophic decision, but the core understanding of the alliance was never questioned, not by George W. Bush, not by any Democrat, not by Reagan, not by anybody. Right?
Right.
And now the United States is a country that could elect a person like Donald Trump. Indeed, could re-elect him. It's unthinkable, but it's possible.
Yeah.
So you're Europe. How can you trust the United States? This is a country that would elect Donald Trump.
Right.
It's like saying, well, look, the Philippines is a key partner, but how key can they be if they're capable of electing a Duterte? They're not. That's what happens, and that the essence of the Atlantic Alliance has been just implicit and unquestioned trust that on the key things we agree.
Mm-hmm.
We can disagree on tactics and even particular policy outcomes, but objectives and goals, we agreed. Donald Trump means that's no longer true. And it's not only no longer true because Donald Trump is president, but it's no longer true because the United States selected Donald Trump to be president. I don't know how you undo that. I know this is a downer, but I've been thinking about it because I've thought this for a long time. This is a national and global catastrophe. The mere election of Trump is a national and global catastrophe. And I think this trip really put the paid to my thought here.
Yeah. I mean, if it was avoidable. I mean, not by.
Of course, it was
Trump,
avoidable.
Course,
These things are photo ops. You just blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You say, of course, Article 5.
Right. We could have elected
people's hands
Trump
without
and
trying
done the
to pull
same
their
thing.
arm off. You don't shove people out of the way. You don't insult Germany. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, just going and having a normal. All the things, by the way, that would have been acknowledged by the press as, well, it's a low bar, but at least he didn't. I mean, we used to joke about that. Well, as long as he doesn't spit in anybody's face or vomit on anybody or whatever, and then he goes and does that stuff. Well, he didn't actually vomit the way Bush did. Yeah, I know, but I mean, look at what he did do. We still are like, well, he didn't dislocate Macron's shoulder, but he did try to do that thing. And he didn't say Angela Merkel sucks. I hate your guts. F you. Well, he didn't say that. Well, boy, you're really working hard at lowering the bar here. I mean, you're digging a trench, jumping up and down on the thing, trying to bear. Wow. Yeah.
It was an embarrassment, David, because they lowered the bar to the ground, and he still tripped on the bar.
Right. They dug. It was buried, and they built a
below
bridge
the
over the trench, and he still fell somehow.
It was, frankly, an embarrassment both for that part of the media that wanted to label this as, well, it was successful. Even they started, when the Europeans started going awry, well, at least the Middle Eastern part went well. But even that fell apart because, then the reporting comes out, he had a screaming match with Abbas. I mean, that's not good. However you feel about the Palestinians, It's not good that the President of the United States is in a screaming match with people.
No, you don't want to try and do that.
Right. Now listen, the Saudi Arabia part, was problematic in my view for a lot of reasons, but the pomp and circumstance was just funny. And, frankly, evidence of how clever the Saudis are. They knew how to get him.
They handled it. They were geniuses at dealing with him. I mean,
absolutely.
Not to brilliant ends necessarily, but, I don't know. I even have trouble crediting them with being geniuses. Everybody sort of knows if you kiss his ass, I mean, he'll do whatever you want. It's just that they did all the things that we joke that you're supposed to do, and lo and behold, they work. So
right now, look, the problem with both the G7 and the NATO summit is you can't do those things because the conviction of it is that while the United States is the leader, no one's subservient. We're all in this together. You're not our king. So you can't have sword parties and give him medals and things like that. It just isn't lent to that type of flattery. So I don't know what you could have done for Trump, but the real problem, they were okay, but then Trump does two things. And I actually would like to know, and I think if an enterprising reporter should be on this story, who decided that Donald Trump would not openly and expressly reaffirm the United States commitment to Article 5?
Yeah.
Who made that decision?
Normally that's a Bannon thing, and he's been so quiet lately, maybe people thought we were done with him, but...
Why wasn't H.R. McMaster having a conniption and fighting about this before that speech?
Yeah.
Speech is a speech. Maybe it doesn't mean anything, but the speech mattered. The whole context of that event was to show we're still together. Nothing, even with Donald Trump,
yeah, I mean,
we're
what
still
else would you
NATO.
go for? It wasn't
and
a
Donald
birthday
Trump
party.
And somebody in his circle decided that, no, we're going to show that it's different. That NATO, you shouldn't have confidence in us, NATO countries. Somebody made that decision.
True.
The norm, don't tell me the first draft of this speech by a normal speechwriter wouldn't commemorate remember, it was a 9/11 commemoration event.
Yes, right.
Which is the one time Article 5 was actually invoked in our favor by our allies in Europe. Thousands of Europeans fought alongside the United States in Afghanistan under Article 5 of NATO.
Yeah. And right, and
hundreds died.
That's all he had to do was come and say thanks for it, and instead he came and said thanks for nothing. You're a bunch of cheats. You never paid up.
You need to pay more. Okay, even that, right. If you don't.
Well, that's actually that's a good juxtaposition. He comes back here in time for Memorial Day. You guys need to pay up. Oh, I'm sorry. We just did make the ultimate sacrifice. We paid the highest price, but I guess that wasn't enough.
I mean, the offensive nature of it all, I totally am a part of, and I understand people's outrage that this man is representing the United States. But I'm just more concerned, I guess, about what this means in real terms. This is a real, the travel ban was ugly, but it's been stopped. And the things he's doing, there's lots of things he's doing and proposing that are repugnant and serious, and they need to be stopped. Mm-hmm. But this happened. Today, NATO is in jeopardy. It just is. Angela Merkel is running for re-election. I understand that some want to say that her reaction is in some ways driven by her domestic politics, but I don't think that's true. Macron just won.
Yeah. Well, I had heard that Merkel's campaign opponent mostly spent the day blasting Trump, and essentially, I would think, giving every German politician licensed to do the same. I mean, I don't know exactly what he said, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised to find out that he was insulted as a German and gave her license to handle it any way she wanted.
I think he probably had political calculus, but
yeah,
think about why that's a political calculus. The German people were outraged. Now, you think, oh, well, screw Germany.
I do.
Who cares what they think? Well,
Well,
you should. You should. The United States is the most powerful nation in the world. But that doesn't mean it can go it alone. The opposite. One of the reasons why the United States is the most powerful nation in the world is because it has shrewdly and morally and consistently been a good ally to its European partners. Now, that's no longer a given. And as I said, I don't think it's just a question of Trump. It's a question of a country that would elect a Trump.
yeah.
I don't think that washes away so easily.
Well, no, it doesn't. And you have to wonder if you were interested in undermining NATO. Well, I mean, it's not that hard to figure out who else would be interested in undermining NATO, of course. But I mean, the chief.
Well, we know who is interested in it,
the chief,
and we know who interfered in the election,
right,
in Trump's favor, and we know who Jared Kushner wanted to create a secret back channel controlled by the Russians with.
Yes.
And all of that comes together with this, which is possibly the single most important foreign policy objective of Vladimir Putin, which is to undermine NATO.
Yes. And in case if you're not a believer in the, oh my God, Putin at the center of giant worldwide conspiracy theories, what have you, we might as well point out it's been the singular strategic goal of Russia and the Soviet Union since forever.
Since forever.
That's all they exist for, was to undermine the opposing power centers. That's all anybody exists for. I mean, I guess at the bottom you could say the same about the United States, but specifically with respect to Europe, the Russians and Soviets have always been interested in expanding their reach and asserting dominance where possible, as any nation state would. And that's why NATO exists, to contain the Soviet Union and later Russia. And the only people who would be interested in dismantling NATO would be people interested, or at least not interested in containing the Russians. And lo and behold, as it turns out, they find themselves willing partners in business and politics with the Russians, so they're not going to contain them. So there you go. I mean, I don't know.
This is anybody who doubts that, and listen, from Russia's perspective, I don't know that they're completely misunderstood on this, because frankly, NATO has caused friction. We've made some decisions that aren't the most prudent and frankly the most accommodating to Russian sphere of interest. Now, you want to talk about that as, well, maybe we need to be a little more cautious in adding NATO members. Maybe, we should be looking to lessen tensions with Russia. Those are all legitimate points. But from our perspective as the United States, undermining NATO the way Trump did is just insane. And the fact is, Bob Corker issues a press release when Trump comes back saying this was a near perfect trip. How does he live that down?
I don't know. That was pretty ridiculous. He's supposed to be a serious guy.
I know, he was supposed to be the serious guy. Oh, the other funny serious guy story was, of course, John Cornyn tweeted out the CBO report is fake news, right?
Yes.
And then John Alter's like, oh, I'm so disappointed in you. I thought you were a serious person. I'm like, whoever thought John Cornyn was a serious person?
No.
You can't be a serious person if you actually thought he was a serious person. But Corker had
tough.
At least stayed away from making statements like that. But then he makes this near perfect trip statement. My God.
I don't know what. Yeah. How do you
He's
explain
the
that?
chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
He
Did you
thought
know
that was good. Okay.
So when John McCain says, well, Trump isn't all of us. Look at the, Congress and this and that. Congress. How about the Senate Foreign Relations, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, McCain? What should we think of his statement?
Yeah, well, yes. That's difficult to explain. He doesn't represent all of us. After all, there's still the Congress. Oh, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee says this was perfect, huh?
And of course, the H.R. McMaster has run around saying, it's ridiculous to question our commitment to Article 5. The president is absolutely committed. He didn't say it. And Trump has told us, only believe what I say.
Yeah, that's true too. He needs an I Heart Article 5 pin.
If H.R. McMaster has any influence at all, then he should have used all of it to make sure that sentence reaffirming Article 5 was in Trump's speech.
Yeah.
And if he couldn't do that, then he's no good. He can't stop anything.
Yeah. I guess a couple of theories about that could have been, that either was in there and, I guess for McMaster, the question is, did he assume...
We were tipped off that he was going to do it.
Yeah. So, normally, like you said, a normal speechwriter begins by putting that in there, and the way this ordinarily would go is somebody says, I intentionally want that out. It's possible, of course, with his speechwriters that they may not have put it in there, but and then there's some question, was it intentionally, were they instructed to leave it out? Are the speechwriters stupid? That's a possibility, too. Then there's also McMaster. Under what illusion is he working? Is he working thinking, surely I don't need to be micromanaging the speechwriting process because, of course you put a renewal of a commitment to Article 5 in a speech like this. I'm not even going to check. Or did he know for sure that this was happening, and did he fight and lose inside the administration?
Did they even put him in the loop of reviewing the speech?
And I guess that's part of the first part of that question. Did he ask to be because did he really feel like he needed to be, or does he not understand the way the bureaucracy normally would work? Normally, of course, he'd be looped in because a government
that's how it works.
They know how to do these things. These guys still don't have any serious clue about which parts of which of the various moving parts of government are supposed to be in the room and in the process and at the table. And a working, functioning United States government has what looks like to an anti-government type like Donald Trump. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. 32 agencies had a hand in writing this speech. Talk about writing your speech by committee. Yeah, but that's the way things usually work because there's lots of moving parts. But someone like Trump will not only forget, but if he's reminded, will think it's ridiculous. Why in the world would I have the Secretary of Energy look at this speech? Because nuclear weapons. Don't you remember? I was told this was a whole big joke during the campaign when you said that the guy from Dancing with the Stars was going to be the Secretary of Energy. And everybody said, oh my God, really, nuclear weapons? The previous secretaries of energy are, actual nuclear physicists, and that it's so dumb to have this guy. You don't remember any of that. Well, it's crazy. I'll bring a general. But then of course he doesn't bring the general. So I don't know. I can't tell how much of it is incompetence, not understanding what's going on.
I think something worse. I think he got mad at something that happened.
Yeah,
that he didn't get enough deference or something, and he said somebody dumb, taking that out.
That may be.
I really do. I really do.
Or some other person acting on his behalf. Yeah.
And you saw his tweets this morning, right?
Yeah, at least one of them, right? That were a laughing stock or
Russia's laughing. There was a previous tweet about attacking Germany.
Oh, was there?
Yeah.
I was wondering if we were going to get a follow-up on Germany is evil and we have to stop their cars from coming into the United States. What are we at now with? I think I did see it and it just didn't stick with me. But I see somebody as retweeting some of his things. Let's look at his his tweet timeline. Let's see. There was, yes, we have a massive trade deficit with Germany. Plus, they pay far less than they should on NATO and military. Very bad for the U.S. This will change.
Right. And the interesting point on trade, of course, is that the U.S. trade policy is set at a continental level, at least an EU level.
Yeah.
Our trade benchmarks are done with the EU. There's no bilateral trade with Germany. No bilateral trade agreements. There's agreements with the EU.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, whatever you think of what the trade issue is, what are you going to do? You're going to pull out of free trade with the European Union?
Yeah, apparently. I don't know. I mean, I'm also not really sure what he thinks the two have to do with one another. Supposing we did have a massive trade deficit with Germany and they paid far less than they should on NATO, both of which are untrue, apparently. But, I mean, is the idea supposed to be, well, we buy a lot of BMWs, so why isn't Germany paying more for defense? Which is it's an interesting juxtaposition. I guess he's arguing that Germany, as prosperous as it is, should raise its income taxes.
Okay.
I mean, I guess that has to be right. I mean, what does it have to do with anything? If BMW is selling us a bunch of cars and we're buying a lot of Mercedes-Benzes and they're not paying a lot for NATO, why are those two things interesting together? If it doesn't mean that, yes, I think that a successful, wealthy country should have a high marginal income tax rate so that they can pay more for defense. P.S. I'm cutting ours. I mean, I guess he could say, well, we're going to equalize things a little bit. We pay too much for our military. They pay not enough. So we're going to stop paying for it. But of course, he's slashing taxes and increasing our military budget at the same time. So he's not equalizing it, and he's arguing for a higher income tax rate in Germany, and he's wrong about the trade deficit and their contributions to NATO. But other than that, it was a perfect trip. I got everything wrong. He insulted our allies. He turned the relationship upside down and hasn't stated a fact for 2 weeks. Perfect.
It's crazy. Now, the reality is German defense spending is just a tad under 2%. So they're really just off the commitment. But remember, he started from the premise that we're supposed to pay the United States. Don't let anybody fool you into thinking Donald Trump thought otherwise. He thought the commitment was they have to pay us, and they're not paying us.
Yes, we're the ones footing the bill for NATO, and they were supposed to pay us back for lunch, and they didn't do it.
Yeah. That's what he thought. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It's not true. He thought they were supposed to pay. Look, he did a tweet about cash dropping. Let's find that tweet because it shows you he doesn't know how it works. It was from last week. Well, look, my God, had forgotten this. I'm going through his timeline.
Yeah.
Donald Trump yesterday, completely unrelated. Sorry to switch, but it was such a striking thing. I suggest we add more dollars to health care and make it the best anywhere.
Oh, okay. Hold on a minute. Let me make a note.
So Trump care is adding more dollars to health care? Of course not. It's cutting $1 trillion from health care.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
So he's now suggesting the reverse, I guess, but he doesn't even know what's in his freaking thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here it is.
I'm not certain what motivated that except to possibly say, well, I understand your base is figuring out what you're doing to healthcare. Oh, okay. Well, what if I tweet that we should add more money? He just said we should add more money. Okay. I'm for him again.
My God. He was in Europe and he tweeted out the Rasmussen report having him a 48% approval rating.
Oh, yes. Thanking everybody for the big support.
He's just...
Well, okay. He's a dope. We do know that.
He is. I mean, and it's... Here it is. This is the tweet I was thinking of.
Okay.
Many NATO countries have agreed to step up payments considerably, as they should. Money is beginning to pour in. NATO will be much stronger. Payments.
Yeah.
They don't make payments. They do military spending.
Right.
They buy tanks and planes and things like that.
You mean there's no NATO coffee fund?
No, there's no NATO coffee fund.
No.
There's no payments. It's not like, okay, let's put it all in the kitty and then we'll, it's not that.
Divide it
that's
up.
That's not the commitment.
Right. You get 8 tanks. You get 8 tanks. You get 4 tanks because you're Luxembourg. You get 8 tanks.
It is because you're Luxembourg.
They're very small. They can't fit more than 6 tanks. It spills over into Liechtenstein.
But to think about it, no
next to each other?
one in his inner circle ever explained this to him. H.R. McMaster didn't sit down and say, look, what that means is they need to spend 2% of their GDP on military expenditures. That doesn't mean they give us the money. Nobody sat down and explained that to him.
There's a NATO ledger we keep. And, right. We pass the hat. It's one of our generals takes off that hat and passes it around, and everybody puts money in it. And
there actually is contributions to the NATO budget per country. It funds that nice
NATO
new
HQ
building that he didn't like either. Remember that?
Right. Yeah. I don't know how much this cost, but yeah, he was angry about them spending too much all of a sudden. Now he's mad. Look, I see the building. Now I'm angry you spent too much. Now let me give you a speech about how you're cheapskates and don't spend enough. Well, you spend on the wrong things, maybe, is what he's thinking. I don't know. Well, he's done a tremendous amount of damage, no doubt about that. And I guess I was thinking more expansively as I was trying to figure out, what does he think he's doing, for instance, undermining NATO? If NATO was established as a method of containing the Russians and he's dismantling our best and most successful tool for containment, could it be that, I know, and he keeps saying, for instance, in the wake of the latest Jared Kushner revelations, he and all of his surrogates saying, look, any channel of communications with the Russians is a good idea. It's probably a little overbroad, and I suspect if you went back and asked, I think that was Jim, or was that, who said it? Was it Kelly? Kelly said, okay. I suppose if you went back and you asked him specifically, okay, would a channel of communications wherein the communication is, if I remove the sanctions, will you give me $4 billion? Would that be a good channel of communication? Because that would be among the any that there could be. Those would be bad, presumably. Are you willing to say that will you give me personally lots of money for changing United States policy vis-a-vis Russia? That would be a bad communication. Good channel, bad communication. Maybe you want to put it that way. Obviously, that can't be the case. But these guys keep saying that any discussion with Russia, or Trump keeps expressing it this way for his base. Russia's a powerful country and they have nuclear weapons too. Why isn't it a good thing that we're friendly? The closer we are, the closer we work together, the less tension there is, the less liability of nuclear war breaking out if we're friends. And that, I'm sure, makes a certain amount of sense on a very basic level to his base.
Yeah, maybe you could have a hotline or something.
Right, that's true. Why couldn't we have that as a channel of communication? By the way, since when... I love the use of the terminology back channel. That's supposed to excuse almost anything. And in the gray world of, Cold War espionage, I suppose it's possible to think about things this way. But since when is I'm going to go to your embassy and speak to your government a back channel? That's the channel. Now, the idea that you were going to use it without telling the rest of the government and via not Soviet anymore, but Russian secure communications equipment meant for keeping their communications out of the eyes and out of eye and earshot of the United States monitoring efforts. That's novel, to say the least. But yeah, the idea of I will use your embassy to speak to your government isn't the back channel.
Look, I don't know why people are dancing around it. He wanted to create a channel that wasn't something that the rest of the government could see.
No, I don't think. Well, nobody's
That's what it
dancing
was.
around it except
he wanted
his
to hide it
surrogates.
from the United States government.
Yes.
He wanted to have a Trump back channel, not a
Yes.
United States back
Right.
channel.
So anyway, I think the use of the terminology back channel is wrong on a number of levels, and certainly the idea that any channel of communications it seems overbroad is a good idea. Seems overbroad, but I mean, I guess we should take them at their word for a moment, just in terms of trying to absorb what it is that they seem to be trying to do. Every opportunity they get, Trump and his surrogates essentially say that we should be growing closer to Russia in every way that we can. And I guess, I mean, it's an idea. I don't know how well people will go over with it, but I mean, one idea for promoting peace between Russia and America would be if America knuckled under in every request and did everything that Russia asked or demanded of us, there would be peace between our nations. We would be dominated by Russia. We would be a satellite puppet government of Russia, but we'd be at peace, presumably. They would have no interest in bombing us or invading us if they could count on us to do their bidding and everything. That's a model for international cooperation. It's just not one that most people are super interested in pursuing in this country.
Well, I mean, there's a couple points I want to make about that. In terms of
You don't like
our
the idea of
relations
surrendering
with
to
Russia, what we need to be working towards is, some type of cooperation and not having a military flare-up. And because there's not much economically that Russia offers, it's a relatively poor country. Access to the Russian markets isn't worth a hill of beans. It's maybe the 20th largest economy, if that. Its per capita income is well below standard. There's nothing that you're going to gain in trade agreements with them. The theory, and this is why they grasped at Syria, because that's
the only thing serious enough to make people think that it was a good idea to talk to the Russians.
Right. And we've been talking, if we haven't been talking to the Russians about Syria, then what the hell are we doing? I'm fairly sure that the Obama administration was engaged in consistent and constant talks with the Russians about Syria.
You would think if we're operating,
And
fighter
now,
jets
is
in
the
close
Trump
proximity.
administration doing it? I doubt it, because they're idiots.
Well, they did tell them we're coming to bomb your airfield. Look out.
Yeah, we told them clear out. We're going to bomb an airfield.
Which isn't a dumb thing to do, honestly. I mean, I would hope that would be communicated.
They have that funny word for it, deconfliction. And that's fine. But that we didn't need, and in fact, it wouldn't even particularly been helpful to have Jared go to the Russian embassy to call Putin to talk about it.
Right. Not in December, anyway.
That's something that's military to military. And in fact, that's how it works.
Yes. Now, of course, we do learn that, I think, I have a feeling we knew this before anyway, but this is sort of getting renewed attention, that it was interesting that Jared is sent to the Russian embassy, or asks to go to the Russian, or, whatever it is. He asks to use their equipment, and then they say, well, now you have to start speaking to a banker for whatever reason. Like, okay.
For whatever reason.
Yeah, right. How is that going to
Sure.
solve the Syria thing? I'm not clear on how. What is
I
it?
actually think there's a relatively innocent explanation for the banker.
Yeah.
Let me defend Jared Kushner here. I think
Okay.
Kislyak obviously thought that the notion of a secret channel where Jared Kushner walks into the Russian embassy is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
People are going to see you.
Yes, I was wondering about that. How did he plan to get around that?
And it's going to come out that you're in the Russian embassy. It's crazy. So he said, look, why don't we try it differently? Why don't you have a secret communication bunker at something that this banker controls?
Yes.
Now, that bank, of course, is under sanctions.
Right.
Because of the Ukraine incursion. And apparently the banker is considered so close to Putin that sanctioning his bank was an appropriate part of the sanctions.
Yeah. And it's a state-operated bank. It makes some sense.
Yeah. I don't know enough about the decisions on sanctions to really have a strong opinion on it one way or the other, but he was under sanction. And the little kicker, of course, is that the law firm that represents that bank in the United States is Trump's lawyers, Morgan Lewis and Bacchus. Which, listen, I defend lawyers defending people. I mean, that's what we do for a living. So I don't criticize the law firm, but the optics, as they like to say, was not particularly good. Why not establish a back channel at the law firm, by the way?
That's true. Could be a better place, and has a little bit more precedent in Cold War history. We keep getting offered, by the way, and I guess actually relevant to this, Arliss Bunny had forwarded on this a response to a tweet. I guess the Twitter conversation's going on. Somebody here who I don't recognize saying basically, I've heard this come up a couple times. Didn't Kennedy and Khrushchev talk on a back channel to solve the Cuban Missile Crisis, et cetera, et cetera? And there are several examples of back channels being used where the actors on both sides are not government officials. Officially. Right. And that does happen, but of course, as Arliss Bunny is pointing out, in the Cuban Missile Crisis, we've got an example of a back channel, a back channel being different from a covert channel. Kennedy, as she points out, was hiding from the press, not the U.S. intelligence community.
Exactly.
And that's
and in fact, Robert F. Kennedy did, in fact, go to the Russian embassy.
Yes, and there's that too. But
he delivered an ultimatum when he went.
Well, yeah. Also, I guess the nature of the communications was very different as well. But yeah, there are situations where you just are trying to find some prominent private citizen who happens to have a personal connection to the leadership of whatever country that becomes your back channel. So I guess it wasn't a good choice for people who cared about maintaining the optics of the other team in this to say, let's let the back channel be between a desperate, money-hungry real estate venture guy whose family fortune is about to go down the tubes and our foreign economic development bank head who's under sanctions. Like, that's not a clean enough contact for you. If you're another party that cares about the optics for the other side here, the covert channel can't be, well, here's what we'll do. We'll send you somebody you already suspect of espionage and international political malmanipulation. You'd send somebody clean that, can get in and out of the country neatly.
You send somebody and have a back channel, as Arliss points out, to keep it outside public.
Don't drop that on us.
You just don't do what he did. You don't. Now, you talked earlier about Kelly, and there's a couple of things about Kelly, I thought. Number one, he's the head of DHS. And Kushner's problems in the transition, frankly, are something he shouldn't have been commenting on anyway. To me, I don't know why he didn't pass it. It goes, again, to misunderstand, because he treated it as if it was true. And to date, as far as I know, the White House has not officially commented on this report, unless you call Trump's fake news tweet some type of statement. But, frankly, Trump's a liar, and we don't believe anything he says. Not that we believe Sean Spicer either, but I don't know who could say with credibly that this story isn't true. And it struck me that Kelly was treating it as true. And does that constitute confirmation? In which case, that's a funny way to confirm the story. But at the same time, on a different network, Lindsey Graham was saying he didn't believe the story.
Yeah.
He said, it's too ridiculous. We intercepted something on a clear channel from Russia back to the Kremlin, from Kislyak back to the Kremlin. I mean, it's a setup. And that would have been a plausible argument, except I think everybody knows it's true.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time with Graham, literally a month ago or weeks ago, with the Comey thing, he kept saying, yeah, well, but, we still need to find out about this, some communications we heard about regarding Loretta Lynch. And that ended up being, as we later found out, the story about the fake report that the Russians did plant.
Yeah.
And that Comey bid on. I assume you've talked about that in the last week.
Yes, and the latest report that he now says, "Oh no, I didn't bite on it. I knew it was fake at the time that I did the things that I did. And I'm still not clear on
what
now.
the hell did you do?"
Yes. So now he's saying I did it because
the fake email, fake information to come out. Therefore, I did exactly what the Russians wanted me to do. James
I'm
Comey,
afraid we are stuck there. Yes.
Yeah. Listen, for political reasons, we're all like, well, James Comey should not have been fired. But you know what? James Comey should have been fired.
Yeah.
He should have been fired by Obama. He shouldn't be fired for investigating Donald Trump by Donald Trump. I mean, that's the problem.
Can't
there.
happen.
But he's a disgrace. I mean,
I
don't say it too loudly because this isn't the right moment, and I understand why nobody else in the Democratic Party is going on about it. But he's a disgrace, James Comey. The FBI is a disgrace. The New York FBI office should be under investigation for violations of the Hatch Act. Yeah. They were basically a wing of the Trump campaign in 2016.
Yeah, we have got a bit of a trouble on that one.
We do.
I
know no one talks about it, but it's a serious issue because we have so much more serious issues than that, I suppose. But
there are many, and they're all distractions from something.
Everything is a distraction, I guess. But.
By the way, on the another interesting tidbit in the Kushner meeting thing, I'm trying to find which of my articles is the source on this one, but it doesn't. I've learned that at some point, Kislyak and Kushner meet.
Yeah.
And
a number of times.
Yes.
And just once.
But at some point, then later on, Kislyak then says, "I want you to meet again," and I want you. Now he's saying, "I want you to meet with the head
the banker."
The banker. And apparently, the first time around. Mind you, Kushner is now, at this point, saying, well, we were talking about Syria, super important, had to talk to these guys about Syria. Now, one issue with that, as a premise, of course, is that this is happening during a time at which Kushner and the Trump transition team all are denying that Kushner has any interest at all in working in the administration, certainly not even seeking a security clearance. We're not going to ask for that. That's not what this is all about, which I suppose a clever person could then argue, see, that's why you should believe we were maintaining him as the person we were going to use in our back channel. You see, these back channels are unofficial channels. We had to keep him unofficial. But it is interesting that Trump would say both at the same time, yeah, you're not going to get a security clearance and we're not going to ask one. But why don't you handle Syria for us with the Russians? Now, that's kind of something that you would need a security clearance probably to do this correctly. And again, as Arliss Bunny is now pointing out, the difference between the Kennedy-Khrushchev situation, all the participants there were all it wasn't the back channel for that reason. And all the participants there on the U.S. side had their high-level security clearances. None of them had business ties with Russia. That wasn't something you could have with Soviet Russia. And of course, pointing out Kennedy was already the president, not in transition to the presidency. But with Kushner specifically, apparently they set up this, or at least they're pushing the idea of a meeting now with the head of this important bank, who's now going to be the back channel guy. They're going to set it up. Here it is. The bank guy and Jared are going to work out Syria. And Jared says to this important meeting, you know what, I can't make it, but I do have a 27-year-old gopher that I use at the Kushner family business, and I'm going to send him. He's going to take notes for me. I can't make it. I got to go skiing, or whatever it was he was planning on doing. He sends an underling. to the secret back channel that only he can conduct, and it has to be done on Russian equipment. It's so sensitive. I'm going to send my assistant, 27. Yeah, he'll take care of it. Oh, by the way, and in all of this mix, by the way, in addition to all this, as we're wondering, so why didn't you say report your contacts with the Russians on your security clearance forms? The applications, the forms you fill out, that somebody has the right code for it, SF86 or whatever it is. Why didn't you say any of this on the form? Because now it's got you in trouble. We now know you had these contacts you didn't declare. That's enough to strip you of your security clearance if you're someone other than the president's son-in-law in a corrupt corrupt administration, for instance. Why didn't you say anything? And especially if you were being sent there at the behest of the president-elect, that would be something you could get away with if you just listed it. The fact that you don't list it makes it difficult. And then his excuse is, well, it slipped my mind. And now with the explanation filled in after the fact, the explanation is, are you saying then that you forgot these meetings even though you were being sent to establish an unprecedented covert back channel using Russian secure communications equipment inside their embassy for the purposes of addressing perhaps the greatest immediate source of conflict and the greatest immediate national security problem confronting the Western world at the time, Syria? You, the 30-something-year-old real estate guy and son-in-law of the president, he sent you to the Russians directly to communicate this and to settle this issue, encompassing U.S.-Russian relations, encompassing the world confrontation with ISIS and international terrorism. And you forgot the appointment. You didn't, you don't have a day planner or anything to remind you to do things like this. Please take on the issue of world peace. The only thing possibly important enough for American voters to swallow as a reason for opening up these unprecedented covert back channels, as you call them. The only thing that would persuade people that it was worth doing, something so important it couldn't even be questioned. Yeah, I forgot that. I forgot that he asked me to do that. Sorry about that. I was, as you recall, I was planning a ski trip with the family at that point, and so I was a little distracted. Yeah, that one you didn't forget. You didn't forget to go skiing twice. You didn't forget to rent a $5 million house. You didn't forget to get yourself a security clearance even after saying that you didn't want one. All of this, but the assignment to you by the President-elect of the United States, please save world peace and confront international terrorism, and do so in secret with the Russians. That never occurred to you. Somehow that slipped your mind in the whole have you ever met with anybody about this stuff question.
It's incredible. Listen, while we were talking, Donald Trump did two more tweets.
Oh, good.
One, he calls on the Mitch McConnell to nuke the filibuster.
Sure, thank you. I'll do that right now. Yeah.
He says he'll have, health care and tax reform in 1+2.
Okay, so he wants that done.
Then he retweeted this Fox and Friends, literally Fox and Friends report.
Yes. That
sources unnamed and also unbylined. Fox and Friends, my friends. Fox and Friends. That, and I quote, Jared Kushner didn't suggest Russian communications channel in meeting, source says.
Uh-huh.
So I guess anonymous sources are okay sometimes.
Yes, right. People are tweeting that alongside of his old tweets saying, anytime you see sources say, it's fake news. And now here's your latest fake news. Sources say that Jared Kushner didn't suggest this thing. Which only means he's a puppet. So it wasn't that he was trying to establish back channels. It was Kislyak was trying to make it look like he was trying to establish back channels, but he just trapped him, I guess.
Yeah, and what's weird about it, of course, is
naive
the source doesn't tell us what was discussed at the meeting. It just says, well, this wasn't discussed. But what else? So what was discussed? And why if not that, then okay, what happened? Was this Jared saying, listen, I need money, man? And the guy says, okay, go to this banker. He'll take care of you. So was it, they don't say it was about Syria.
And
no. I'm not sure what that banker would know about Syria. So why does he go to the banker?
Yes. Well, right. The only possible explanation that would make any sense, like in the Cold War context, is we weren't having him talk about banking. It was just we needed a prominent citizen who was connected to
who was under sanctions
Russia.
in the United States.
Yes, that would be a bad choice. I mean, Putin knows a lot of people. And he could pick somebody that, but I maybe
I just understand why they could just
talk
to Kislyak. I mean, presumably Kislyak can get to Putin.
Yes.
He's the ambassador, isn't he?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, well, that would make it a front channel. He wanted a back channel. So it needed to be somebody who wasn't officially connected to the government, except, of course, the head of, what is it? How do you say it again? Venezuelan Bank, or whatever it is,
right,
is connected to the government because it's a state-run bank. They have another bank that isn't state-run that you could presumably have said was unconnected to the federal, or to the Russian government, and I guess they are a federal government, aren't they? But the unconnected to the Russian government that Jared could have spoken to, like, for instance, Alpha Bank. And, of course, it would be very easy for him to communicate with Alpha Bank because somebody built private servers that communicate directly with nothing in the world but Alpha Bank and put them in Trump Tower. And we still don't know exactly who did that, although that also reminds us that we have been told over the last couple of days, or actually the last couple of months, and sometimes we've been reminded of it over the last couple of days, that Jared was considered the data and internet computer type genius of the campaign, or at least somebody wanted that to be the story, that he was the data and internet genius that put the whole thing together, that made it possible for Trump to pull off this stunning quote-unquote victory. P.S. Somebody put some weird servers in Trump Tower that does nothing but talk to a Russian bank, and nobody knows who did that. But also, I'm the computer genius. But it wasn't me. He doesn't say it wasn't him yet either. But in all of this, I mean, I guess they could have had the back channel be Alpha Bank, but they didn't. Probably because by the time they got around to needing a backstory, Alpha Bank was already tainted. So they just gave us some other bank, and I guess we're supposed to think all Russian banks are the same, or this was a huge lie from the beginning, and it was really an issue of, well, the person we want you to talk to about whatever it is, whether it's Syria or anything else. Let's say you're serious and you really did want to talk about Syria with somebody who wasn't Putin or Kislyak for whatever reason. Why don't we have that person be someone who could also, while you're having your discussions, convince you to raise sanctions, lift the sanctions against Russia and against Russian actors, somebody who would have a personal interest in making sure that you did that because he himself his organization is itself under sanction. And two, while you're at it, maybe since the $4 billion you were seeking from the Chinese in a deal to bail out your signature flagship property of the Kushner family, 666 Fifth Avenue, the $4 billion bailout deal with the Chinese fell through. It might not be a bad thing if you also had discussion with somebody who had access to something like $4 billion in capital to give you, which they could give you if you would just lift the sanctions. So it would all be wrapped up in a neat package. But P.S., that's not what it was. It was about world peace. And you forgot. Okay. That's a great story. Everyone will believe that. That's where we are. That's exactly what we're being handed. It was supposed to be about Syria saving world peace, No one could
now
know.
we're handed, David, that it didn't happen.
Oh, right, and it didn't happen. I forgot. That's the other part. See, that's why I forgot to report it. It didn't happen. That's why. What?
They're not even good at being crooks. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, they don't regard it as being crooks now. I mean, if they hadn't won the election, they would be crooks. But because they won, that's not being a crook. It's world peace.
What can you say? I and it's so much coming at you too, because this, Trump reminds us that he's about to decimate healthcare, and
yes.
He's about to pay for tax cuts for the rich by decimating healthcare. So,
except not
then we start looking at that. But this story that you just
already
outlined is outrageous.
Yes, it is. But
if
also
he wasn't
didn't happen.
the son-in-law, even Trump would have fired him today. They fired Flynn, and frankly, this is Flynn-level stuff.
Yes, and maybe possibly even beyond.
Yes, possibly. Because here there could be actual money payoffs. As I tweeted yesterday, and I think it's funny that maybe nobody else does. I said, Robert Hansen is probably in his jail cell going, what the F,
Yeah. I mean, he just didn't have the right story. He should have been, he should have claimed it was a back channel.
It was a back channel.
And
he was feeding them disinformation.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's how Alder James started, by supposedly feeding disinformation.
Yes, I didn't give him anything good.
Until I started to give them good, and then I gave up all the people who knew I was doing it and got them killed.
Yeah. Well, the world of espionage is very strange and convoluted and backwards and gray. I mean, what you learn from, at least from watching movies about it, is in the end, it may turn out that everybody you thought was a bad guy was a good guy, and vice versa. But, we haven't gotten to the twist yet where we find out that Jared's the good guy really pursuing world peace. But
he's a double agent.
Dang it. It might be true. We certainly found out that quickly about Flynn, but we ignored it for whatever reason, or we didn't, but our government did, as we were forced to point out again. He'd already been busted for essentially being a double agent by the Obama administration. He did a lot of things, including the things which are explicitly prohibited by very strict counter espionage rules in the Pentagon, like you can't have unsecured internet access in the office of the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency inside the Pentagon, because it's just too easy to transfer, even accidentally transfer, the most sensitive information in the world accidentally to our enemies. So we eliminate that possibility by, making the office airtight. But you went around that. But you say why? Because you wanted to be able to buy tickets on StubHub, before you left work or something. What would be the excuse for that? I never did get Flynn's explanation for why he thought it was so super important for him to be able to surf the internet when he's supposed to be, monitoring the world for terrorism and dangers. I need to be able to see ESPN.com. And I mean now. So he goes in and installs this thing that it's like, but if we catch you, you're doomed because there's no possible good explanation for it. So we did catch you, so you're fired. Fine. I'll get another administration to make me national security advisor. And they go ahead and do that. And I mean, you can't. He's a spy. Why are you doing this? And we have said it very obviously. As soon as the name came up and they said, yeah, he's going to be the guy, in November, I started tweeting, you can't do this. He's a spy. Why are you crazy? How could you possibly name him? And a few months later, we find out, yeah, we got to fire him because he's a spy. Well, once that's possible, once you can make that mistake, I suppose, your government could be rife with them. And even if Jared Kushner was really only in it about money and I'm only meeting with these guys, I don't care about sanctions. I need a lot of capital, and I tried with the Chinese, and that didn't work. The next best bet is the Russians. It worked for my father-in-law. I'm sure both the Trump sons and probably Ivanka too, was saying if it doesn't work out with the Chinese, Russia can't stop giving us money. I'm sure they'll do the same for you. So he begins working on that. But as we've also pointed out yesterday, the Cold War spy annals are rife with people who just did it for money. They weren't committed communists. They just wanted extra cash or needed extra cash. He happens to have a tremendous need for an awful lot of cash that can only come from, probably, really, since no American banks will touch that garbage that he's got. He overpaid by hundreds of millions of dollars for the flagship property of his company and needed a way out. No one wanted to touch it. The Chinese were one opportunity. Even they didn't want it. The only people left in the world that have access to the kind of money that you're talking about and don't care about return on investment is the guy that the I keep going back to that, the Russian ambassador suggested you meet with directly, and he'll be your back channel to whatever the hell, even though the Syria story now makes zero sense. That didn't come up. Nobody discussed Syria until last week or so when they said that will be our excuse. I can't believe that. Now I need to find. I'm still looking around to find the first discussion of Jared not even bothering to show up for that meeting and sending his assistant in his place.
Yeah.
I know that's in there somewhere, but there's a couple of other good pieces here that describe a lot of the rest of this background detail.
Yeah, while you look,
I'll share them with you.
I'll give you some thoughts on this. Jared Kushner should leave the White House.
Yes.
For his own sake.
Yes. Yesterday's other untouched story was, I was planning on leaving the White House all of this time anyway. I'm totally
That's
thinking
fine.
about it.
Go with that.
Right.
Just do it.
It's
Just
a
go.
cover story. It's alive, but do it. Okay.
The feeling that some people had argued, well, Jared and Ivanka will be some type of moderating influence on Trump, and that's obviously not true. One big decision that he says he's making this week, at least he tweeted last week he was making this week, is the Paris Accords, the climate change accords, which are deadly serious. Obviously not nearly enough, as told to us by climate change experts. But imagine the United States backing out of it. The United States of America will back out of the climate change accords. That means we will do nothing as a world about climate change. Nothing. And that was a very contentious agreement. It took years to negotiate. And this fool, because somebody hurt his feelings, is going to back out of it. So can Jared and Ivanka do anything about it? Of course not. So what good are you? What are you even putting yourself through this unless you need the money? And I think that's really where it comes down to. Is he doing this so that he gets Russian money to bail him out of his 666 problem? Which I assume is the problem because that's what's on the public record, that he, grossly overpaid for it and has a huge amount of debt that he can't refinance and can't deal with.
Yeah.
So that's why people say, well, why is he doing this? Why is Jared even talking to the Russians at all? Why would you put your son-in-law in that position in the context of what had happened in the 2016 election and all the charges that were made? Well, did he? Or did Jared do it himself? I don't know. Certainly his father-in-law can't help him. He has no money. And he has no way of, and his brother-in-laws can't get him any money. So what are we talking about? Well, why? It's an argument not an argument, a point you and I have made for more than a year that, and I still don't think it's disproven in any way. We don't know. We only have the words of the Trump boys and some information, which is that Trump's only source of income, or rather source of money, came from the Russians after 2008 and 2009.
Yeah.
That's why he couldn't save his casinos. That's why he couldn't save anything. Frankly, here was a guy whose main source of income was The Apprentice.
Yeah, at that point.
And licensing deals. He doesn't make the golf courses. I guess he probably makes a little money on, but come on, what does he make? Listen, it's a lot of money. I don't want to pretend that this is not a lot of money, but $5 million,
I don't know,
$10 million. That's just not a ton of money.
Right. Well, if it's not $10 billion, then it can't be any help to a guy who needs $4 billion.
Right. So,
by the way, yes, I did dig up the reference to his sending an assistant. Actually, a New York Times report, the latest, or yesterday's work from Rosenberg, Mazzetti, and Haberman. Among other places, I noticed it, but yes, they do make mention of it. Let me scroll back down to it. I've found it in Pocket and then opened it back up. Let's see, where are we here? Here we go. After the first meeting with Mr. Kislyak, she said at the time, who are we? Who's our she here? Let's see.
Hope Hicks.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my God. Why even bother asking? If it's a woman who did something, it must be Hope Hicks. And indeed it is. After the first meeting with Mr. Kislyak, she said at the time, the Russian ambassador asked for a follow-up discussion to, quote, deliver a message. Don't say that. Even Kislyak is doing poor tradecraft, even for Kislyak. Mr. Kushner sent Avram Berkowitz. Everyone knows, international super spy, Avram Berkowitz, a long-time associate. This is somebody we're talking about who's, I think, 27 years old. There's no long-time anything. It's been a long time since he wet the bed, yes, but it's not been a long time that he's been associated with anybody in the adult world. And now a White House aide, because why not? At that session, Mr. Kislyak told Mr. Berkowitz, who he should have told, get the F out of my office. Who are you?
What, you don't even come to my office?
Right. I mean,
where's the respect?
What are you doing in the Russian embassy? First of all, for your own good, you're an idiot. Why did you walk in here? You're marked forever. Second of all, you're not even your idiot boss. At that session, Mr. Kislyak told Mr. Berkowitz that he wanted Mr. Kushner to meet Mr. Gorkov, Ms. Hicks said, which is, I guess, I don't know whether that's supposed to mean either this is what I think our next step should be, or yes, when I ask for Jared Kushner, I mean Jared Kushner, not Avram Berkowitz, which is just annoying to even say out loud. Ms. Hicks did not say at the time why Mr. Kislyak had wanted to arrange a meeting between Mr. Kushner and Mr. Gorkov, the head of the Vneshenikonom Bank. But she said that during Mr. Kushner's meeting with Mr. Gorkov, there was no discussion about the Kushner company's business or about American sanctions against Russian entities like the bank. They just had some sandwiches. Do you like golf? No. Me neither. My father-in-law loves it, but anyway, have a nice day. Nothing discussed. Not business, not American sanctions, not business, not policy, not nothing. Just nice to make your acquaintance. You too. Avram Berkowitz was a pleasant fellow. Thank you for coming on your own this time. Jeez. Sorry to bother you.
Very pleasant Avram Berkowitz.
Yeah, I'm sure he's a nice guy. But yeah, okay. But it's been mentioned elsewhere.
No, seriously, you mentioned that. Where did he come from?
He's a guy who used to work for Kushner at the Kushner companies.
All right, so he's a real estate guy.
Yeah. At 10 years younger than the already too young Jared Kushner. But, Soviet, whatever, blah, 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 International Economic
Whatever
Development
happened
Bank.
to Boris Epstein?
Good question. Too tainted.
I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't know where he is
expect you to
lately.
have the answer.
Right. No, I don't know. I do know that Sebastian Gorka, the other
he's still around.
one, is still there. And he managed, to hang on in the...
He doesn't have any. That's the guy who actually doesn't have a classified security clearance.
Yeah, he may not.
So he just sort of sits in his office and throws a ball against the wall.
I guess so. His wife too has been brought into the administration, but can't seem to get rid of these guys. Anyway, I should not head down that particular tangent today. Since
Yeah,
there's
I'm
so
sorry.
many other things, but
it's just
I
we
brought
were
it up.
talking about Avram Berkowitz. And,
Yeah.
and I said, whatever. I was wondering whatever happened to him.
True. I wonder about where all these people went to. Let's see. Other things that we ought to mention, at least put on record here. Gosh, and there's so much. And tomorrow maybe we'll catch up on things that are not Trump directly, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm sorry
But
to have directed
what
you
else
all
are we
the way
going
there.
to do, really, at this point? All of this has to be discussed at some point, and we might as well just spend the day on it. Let's see. I'll recommend to everybody, just for fun, that you take a look at the entry, or maybe we'll just read through it and see what we can skim from it. From Wonkat, always fun. Always put the fun kind of spin on what's going on, and put Trump things in the worst possible light, which is itself fun. $5 Feminist, a writer I have not read on the air from Wonkat, just by way of background, in case you're still confused. Kushner's real estate woes have nothing to do with his Russian meetings. Nothing at all. That's, of course, the latest line coming out of the White House. But, she rounds up the background of Kushner as slumlord, which I think is perhaps an unfair label. They weren't slums. They're just not very nice apartments. But I wouldn't describe them as garden apartments either, as they did, or as they described them in Kushner's Father's Day when they put those things together. But yeah,
they had broken windows so you could feel the great outdoors.
Right. There you go. Take a look in the garden. They also include in this roundup, though, if you're still, have questions about, well, what is the deal with this 666 Fifth Avenue? Terrible address. But in case you were wondering, I keep saying it's in such financial distress. What was the problem? The way they put it here, young Jared, then all of 26 years old, just younger than Mr. Berkowitz at this time, negotiated for his family real estate company to buy 666 Fifth Avenue in New York for $1.8 billion, as reported at the time in Bloomberg, or I guess not at the time, reported this year, looking back at the time. Bloomberg saying the original purchase in early 2007 was his grand entry into Manhattan, like the Trumps moved to Manhattan.
How about that?
Yeah, taking the company his father built on suburban garden apartments, remember that term, into a future marked by more prestigious urban properties, costing a then record-setting $1.8 billion. In early 2007, the building would later become a symbol for a period of irrational exuberance in U.S. real estate. I mean, remember 2007, he paid the most ever for this building, which was marginal at best, immediately before the big real estate crash, because he's such a genius. That's the guy to send to meet with the Russians, by the way, the visionary. So it became a symbol for a period of irrational exuberance in U.S. real estate, where a belief in forever climbing rents sent values soaring. The deal was financed with $1.215 billion in loans from Barclays Capital, still a legit bank at that point, which was divided and sold in commercial mortgage bond offerings. Data compiled by Bloomberg show. The deal, as they put it in Wonkat, the deal was a disaster from the beginning. One of the trade publications, The Real Deal, pulled no punches describing how totally out of whack the financing was, even after the Kushners brought in Vornado Realty Trust as a partner in 2011. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't Vornado his brother Josh's company? Yes. Critics, that's a real good way to bail out the family on that one. We'll sink our brother too. Critics had slammed the deal for being over-leveraged. Cash flow at the time of the purchase covered only 65% of the debt service. The debt service. And indeed, Kushner eventually needed to work out a deal with the lenders and bring in Vornado Realty Trust as a partner in order to hold on to the asset. He almost lost it in bankruptcy right away, is what they're saying. The capital...
He couldn't make it. The debt service was insane.
The capital stack, as they call it, for the property, said one luxury condo developer active in the market is insane. The investor documents obtained by Bloomberg estimate that the completed redevelopment will be worth $7.2 billion, which is why you would do such a deal in the first place, but one, you pay a reasonable price for it, and two, you don't over leverage to get it. But, if in the end you're going to have a $7 billion development, then paying $1 billion for it makes some sense, but that means you got to come up with some billions of dollars to actually do that deal. And if you can't even maintain the debt service on the 1.8 you paid, how are you going to do the capital improvements to bring it up to $7.2 billion valuation? I don't know. For the project to pencil out at those numbers, $7.2 billion, even assuming the very rosy projections for the office and retail components, and mind you, this is pre-crash, the partnership would have to be underwriting the condos at an average of up to $9,000 per square foot. This developer said. That's a price not even the most ostentatious of the current crop of buildings has even come close to. 432 Park Avenue, for example, was asking for an average of $6,800 per square foot, according to an analysis, blah, 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 back in January 2014, and it had to offer significant discounts to buyers. Just 24 Manhattan sales have ever closed north of $7,000 per square foot between the second quarter of 2015 and the first quarter of 2017. So nobody has ever sold Manhattan real estate for even anything close to the amount of money that they would have to get per square foot. Every single square foot of this development would have to sell at a price that was $2,000 per square foot higher than anybody anywhere in Manhattan had ever commanded in history.
It's reminiscent of the when Trump himself bought the shuttle. I think it was the Eastern shuttle or the Continental shuttle. Mm-hmm. And Frank Lorenzo tells that story. It's like, obviously I needed to sell it, blah, blah, blah. He wanted it. Yeah. So I put a price that's high, and he said yes, and that was that.
Yeah. Well, both of them are very similar in that the real estate genius label got attached to them because they have managed to purchase very flashy assets. They don't have enough money to do that. They bought them highly leveraged on debt, but, in our system, even if you have that much, even if you're heavily in debt, you have the paperwork, you're considered the owner. So you go around saying, I own this, that, and the other thing. You own that, you must be a rich guy, and then everybody extends credit to you as though you are a rich guy, even though you're actually negative net worth. That's one of the fun things about capitalism. The money doesn't have to show up until later. But yeah, just as it happens, both of these guys overpay every time they buy a major asset. But at least one of them, Trump, he writes books saying, I'm a genius at making deals. I make the best deals. He actually makes the worst deals, but he writes books, or he hires other people to write books for him that say he makes the best deals. So people say, hey, he makes the best deals. We need a businessman like him in the White House making the best deals for America. He actually makes the worst deals, and he's not a businessman in the traditional sense. That is to say, the CEO of a publicly traded company. He's accountable to no one, and there's nobody in the Trump organization who can say to him, you're screwing our shareholders. We're going to sue you if you buy this building. This building is worth, at most, $500 million. To pay $1.8 billion for it is suicide. We will sue you the pants off of you if you do that. But if you don't have shareholders, you just say, everybody shut up or you're fired. You buy the thing. The guy who's selling it to you says, well, what do I care? I'll get a big lump of cash, and then I'll get it back. I'll repossess it.
That's the bank's problem. It ain't my problem.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. It's not an issue. But, right, like they say here, just to sum up what the way
well, he securitized it, right? He said he issued convertible bonds.
Well, it wasn't him, but the bank that did it. But, yeah. The way they sum it up.
They got their fee got out of it. Somebody else is going to be holding the bank.
Right. So that's your problem. That's why we did the deal. Why did we lend him $1.2 billion to buy a $500 million building? Because we're going to sell off the debt immediately and make our money back, and then the rest of you will get screwed. And then why did real estate collapse immediately after? I don't know. It's a good question.
Yep, that's exactly,
happened.
that was the formula in the
Weird.
odds, and why we had the big crash of 2008.
So all of you who lost your homes, Jared didn't. And he's also, at the same time, if you didn't go out and over-purchase a house and get screwed out of it and lose and stayed a renter in a garden apartment instead, he's still screwing you. He's taking your money out the other way. But as they sum it up here quickly in just one line, really, here in Wonkette, in plain English, just to pay off the interest on their loan, the Kushners need to convince buyers to pay 25% above the going market rate for the condos that they were going to build at a time when no one was buying anything. I mean, it just happened I keep saying that. It just happened to be that the crash happened immediately after they made this overinflated purchase, but the crash really happened because people were doing deals like he's doing. He just got into it late and was the last one. His deal is the last straw, the straw that breaks the camel's back. But, essentially, our real estate genius watched the market do this for a decade, and then at the last possible second said, I want to do one like that. And he did it, and it all fell apart, but he's a boy genius.
Yeah, but understand something else about those things. The people who were the a major part of that overpayment for luxury condos were Russians.
Yes, that's true too. There is the possibility when we all say someone should have seen this collapse coming. I guess the people, by way of excuse, the people least capable of seeing the collapse coming would be the people who had made their money almost exclusively selling luxury condos to buyers who had almost no interest in a return on their investment. But rather, I just want an asset that even if it's sold for a steep discount will give me clean, hard currency in America that I don't have to ship covertly to get there or put offshore. So they didn't care. So I guess at that point you say, well, I'm the genius of the marketplace. My unique genius is I don't work in the marketplace. I just take money from people who need stuff laundered and don't care about getting any return on it. They just want some portion of it back if they sell their condos again. So what's the price I charge them? I don't know. I guess how about 25% above the going market rate, even at a time when no one's buying? Done. I'll take two.
Well, again, I know I talk about Trump too much, but the mansion he sold in Palm Beach in that time frame was at least 100% above market.
Right. So I guess like the idea that sure.
And it was a teardown.
Yeah, it was amazing. So yes, I suppose analysts at that point are saying, I don't know why he's doing this. It's crazy. Nobody's going to pencil out at what he's saying. You'd have to be able to sell condos at 25% above the going market rate to at least 400 complete morons. How could you possibly do that? Now, mind you, at the same time, they are selling, his father-in-law is selling 200 condos at a time to complete morons who don't care. How much for the condo? $9 million. Really? Because I actually could buy one on eBay, buy it now for $1 million. But for you, $9 million. And they take it. So he's going to have a lot of confidence that he can pencil out at that. And at the same time, by the way, can you really make that work? Can you really get enough desperate people to purposely pay too much? I don't know, man. My sister just came back from China, and she says Chinese people will give you $500,000 at the drop of a hat if it means they can get a green card. Can we work that out? Yes, we can, actually. Don't even have to win the election to work that one out, as it turns out, but it would be a hell of a lot easier if we could do that. So they were raising capital left and right from people who had no interest in necessarily earning anything on it. That's the difficulty. That's why you can't get an American bank to lend to you. They don't think they're going to get their money back unless, as Barclays did, they can cheat and divide it up, capitalize it, and securitize it and sell it off. But if you're just talking about selling an apartment to somebody, no. It's not going to work. You need to have somebody who's either insane or has no concept of capitalism or doesn't care. Do you have enough of those to go around? The Trumps say they knew that where they could find such people. The Kushners were finding them at a lower rate, 500,000 at a time in China. But I guess if you don't have to depend on the market, then, that's a terrific trade secret. You can do deals like this.
Yes. Patent that.
Yeah, until you get arrested. Oh, well.
Until you get arrested. Bernie Madoff did pretty well for a while, too.
So, time for us to wrap up on the day. But
thanks for letting me talk about this. I needed to get it off my chest.
Thank you. Thanks for helping us carry it through. We'll be ready to hand things off to the guys in the after show in just a minute. Thanks, Armando. Feel free to chime in again tomorrow. We'll be without Joan, I believe.
Okay.
On vacation.
Well, maybe I'll slip into her slot. Let's see.
Terrific.
Okay.
See you tomorrow. And before we hand the mics over, yes, there are a couple other things that maybe we'll make a practice of speaking about these things on Wednesday in honor of Joan's vacation. We're going to take care of things. We're going to make her really feel like she's out on vacation by covering some congressional issues. As Armando mentioned, we now have, of course, the president tweeting about encouraging Mitch McConnell to use the nuclear option to get their health care and tax packages through. I wonder, does that mean that they have settled on what the tax brackets are going to be? Gosh, I hope so. That would be nice to know beforehand. But also something that related news, as it turns out, and has been diaried by others over at Daily Kos. Remember the whole blue slip rule, apparently on its last legs. This mentioned in a Mother Jones story by Kevin Drum inside the mainstream traditional media, but in a Daily Kos diary as well, just to sort of bring that back and bring it to your attention. Yes, as predicted, the Republicans ready to do away with the blue slip system that would otherwise have allowed Democrats in representing states with 2 Democratic senators from preventing judicial nominations from going forward in committee. This was once again something that Orrin Hatch pulled when he was chair of the Judiciary Committee, and which Pat Leahy, when he retook the chair of the Judiciary Committee, said, well, we're going to go back to the old rules and allow Republicans to block President Obama's nominations for 8 years. And lo and behold, when the shoe was on the other foot, the Republicans said, oh, yeah, by the way, to hell with that again. And we're going to get rid of that rule and stuff the judiciary full of Donald Trump's nominees. So we'll catch up on that, too. Isn't that fun? Plus some other non-overtly political, rather non-Washington-centric, perhaps, political stories nonetheless. And much, much more on tomorrow's shows and for the balance of the week. What about the after show coming up next? They are back on the air, aren't they? Yes, they are. Red Sky at Morning Tuesday on the after show. Donald Trump Transportation Department just put the brakes on truck safety. A Texas GOP lawmaker threatened to put a bullet in a rival's head after a brawl broke out on the floor of the legislature when he called ICE to arrest immigration protesters.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thank you for listening. Much more out there. Thank God for the after show. The head of the Portland, Oregon GOP calls in armed extremist white nationalist militias to protect Republicans after an extremist white nationalist killed 2 and wounds 1 in that Portland light rail car attack. Amazing. They have no idea who's after them.